introducing our panelists so that you can get to know them a bit more. So I'll start with Marion Mwangi. Marion, if you can put on your video. So Marion Mwangi is the current Managing Director of BOC Kenya, which is the leading gases and engineering solutions company. She's an independent non-executive director of British American Tobacco and a director at the Kenya Association of Manufacturers. Marion is also a long-serving trustee of the Palm House Foundation, an education trust that has shaped the lives of more than 900 bright and needy secondary school young people, and council member of Super Brands East Africa. She's a full member of Women Corporate Directors, serving in the Programs Committee. She has over 20 years experience in senior management roles with expertise in lean manufacturing, performance management, and trade marketing. Over the last few years, she has a proven track record in transitioning business in turnaround situation across fast-moving consumer goods, commodity, dairy, and professional service sectors. Marion was recognized as top 40 over 40 for a period of 4 years by the Business Daily. She won the Global Community Service Award at Kraft Foods for impacting her community, and is a sought-after mentor, executive coach, and public speaker. Marion is an active Rotarian and a Toastmaster. Marion holds a BSc in International Business Administration from USIU. Our second panelist is Edna. Edna Ambundo is the Director of Colgate-Palmolive's India Global Technology Center, where she leads the research and development organization based in Mumbai. Edna is a seasoned innovator with over 18 years experience in fast-moving consumer goods across home, personal, and oral care, touching billions of consumers around the world and enabling business growth. A strategic thinking leader, Edna has a successful track record of leading cross-functional teams and developing diverse talent gained from time spent in US, Mexico, and India. Edna is known as a passionate, inspiring, transformational leader who brings about positive, meaningful change through people. Edna holds a BSc and a PhD in chemistry and was a postdoctoral fellow at MIT. A lifelong learner, she enjoys new experiences, reading, traveling, and food. Our third panelist is Dr. Githinji Gitahi. Dr. Githinji is the Global Chief Executive Officer of AMREF Health Africa. Prior to AMREF, Dr. Gitahi was a Vice President and Regional Director for Africa, Smile Train International, Managing Director for Monitor Publications in Uganda, as well as General Manager for Marketing and Circulation in East Africa for the Nation Media Group. He held progressively senior positions at GlaxoSmithKline and Avenue Group. Dr. Gitahi is the former co-chair of the UHC 2030 Steering Committee, a global World Bank and World Health Organization initiative for universal health coverage, and has recently been appointed as the co-chair, Strategic Advocacy Committee, Partnership for Maternal, Newborn, and Child Health, and a member of the Unilever Sustainability Advisory Council. He serves on several boards, such as the Standard Group, Safaricom Foundation, and the Africa CDC. He's also a member of the Task Force on Africa's COVID-19 response. Dr. Gitahi holds a bachelor's degree in medicine from the University of Nairobi, a master's degree in business administration from USIU, and a certificate for strategic perspectives for nonprofit management from Harvard University. Dr. Gitahi was bestowed the 2018 Moran of the Order of the Burning Spear, MBS, by the President of Kenya in recognition of his outstanding contribution and commitment to the health sector. Last but definitely not the least is our very own Manoj Shah, who is a lion, before I even say any of his other credentials. Manoj Shah is the Group Managing Director, Kingsway Tyres Limited, Kingsway Investments Limited, Kingsway Properties Limited, Creative Innovations Limited, and Growth Management Limited. Manoj is the Chairman and Director of Tribe Hotels Limited and Green Hills Investment Limited, which is a part of the Village Market Group. Manoj is also the Chairman of the MP Shah Hospital, the Vice Chairman of Lions Sight First Eye Hospital, Governing Council Member of the Automobile Association of Kenya, He's the current president of iconic Toastmasters Club, board member of the St. John's Ambulance Priory Council, and Lions Club International Foundation trustee. Manoj has over 45 years work experience and is recognized as an authority in transforming loss-making institutions and companies and turning them into industry leaders and making them profitable. Manoj holds a bachelor's degree in business administration from USIU and was awarded honorary doctorate in philanthropy and humanities in recognition of the contributions to humanity and philanthropic work by United Graduate College and Seminary in the USA. Manoj was awarded with the Head of State's Commendation from President of Kenya for outstanding and selfless contributions to the community welfare and leadership. So ladies and gentlemen, those are the panelists who are going to be guiding us this afternoon on what leadership is and what we need to do to reach where they are. So I'm going to ask a question to all the panelists, which I want each of them to respond to. We've had their bios, very good bios for each one of them, but I want each of them to tell us who are they. And I'll start with Manoj Shah. Who is Manoj Shah and who do you look up to for inspiration?
Thank you very much, Dr. Ann, for introducing me and painting such a beautiful picture of me to this August gathering this afternoon. Well, to all our listeners, Manoj to the world is the Group Managing Director of the Kingsway Group of Companies in Kenya. He is someone who has created a work empire in the automobile, property, hospitality, and the finance sectors. He has also been the leader and the person instrumental in making a strong, sustainable foundation for both the MP Shah Hospital and the Lions Sight First Eye Hospital. But Manoj to myself, my family and friends is a creator, believer, server, executor, and mentor who believes in giving his best in the furtherance of mankind and setting precedents in a unique way. And that is my interaction with the Lions Clubs International and the various key portfolios that I hold in various social organizations. Back to you, Anne.
Thank you, Manoj. Who do you look up to for inspiration? Who's your mentor?
And I owe my life and successes to my late mother, who was my real mentor. My virtues of giving back to the society in more than one way has been deeply imbibed in me by my mother. In fact, I've just recently launched my biography, and I've dedicated my biography, One in a Million, to the most divine soul in my life, and that is none other than my revered mother. However, I've always considered late Lion Dr. S.P. Amin as my mentor. He had rare qualities and was very special to me as he managed, counseled, and helped me find solutions to many of my family and business challenges. With Dr. S.P. Amin and his wife Mradulaben, we have traveled together to attend Lions conventions, forums, and even taken vacations together. Dr. S.P. Amin and his wife Mradulaben have treated me like their son. And both my daughters are like his daughters. So my true inspiration is my mother and Dr. S.P. Amin. Back to you, Anne.
Thank you very much. Let's hear from Marion. Marion Mwangi.
And thank you very much for the opportunity as well. And what a wonderful panel. And just listening to Manoj and the mission and vision of Lions, I feel quite connected with it. I'm a mother of three. I'm a wife, I'm a daughter, I'm a sibling who is involved in service through working as a turnaround managing director, this time around with BOC gases, that has a real purpose that I believe in. I also serve on some boards for governance, impact, and representation. And I've begun to create a platform in my public speaking work to create a voice for the future of leadership and where we are all going with inclusion. I'm also an executive coach with passions around assisting people to raise their faith in themselves and to reduce doubt around their callings. I think my inspiration is quite similar to many people around the world. I look up to different people and sources of inspiration and around these vocations that I just mentioned. I have about 5 to 6 active mentors that I connect with periodically. And I feel inspired by lessons and sermons drawn from the good book, from the Bible actually, and experiences as a leader that I've acquired over the many years that I've led and as time has passed by. I have a vision, and that I want to share. I really want to lead a fulfilling, balanced, and successful life, impacting people positively, the ones that I encounter, and I've got a guiding principle which I'll probably have a chance to speak about later. Back to you, Anne.
Thank you very much, Marion. Gitahi, we all know you from TV, but who is Gitahi and who do you look up to? Who is your mentor?
Well, thank you, Anne, and thanks for having me. I'm really glad to be at this forum. Really happy to hear from Manoj. Manoj, of course, I don't think we've met, but I know you, of course, from the industry. Marion, we've worked quite closely in this pandemic, putting up oxygen in different places. And Anne, I think I look at myself as a village boy, having been brought up in Nyeri many years ago. A village boy whose biggest dream was to own a bakery. And the reason for that was that, of course, I loved bread, but it wasn't available. And therefore, I always thought that maybe if I owned a bakery, I would have easy access to bread. And I think I still think of access until now. Never mind that I don't take much of it right now. But I am an 8th born in a family of 9. So you can tell we are a fairly big family. I'm 8th born, I'm 51 years old now. So you can imagine that 7 people are ahead of me. So it's a big and much older siblings to me. I am divorced and remarried. I am a father of 6 children. And I am currently very passionate about access and equity. I think that for me is really what makes a difference, because I always think of the saying that the opposite of poverty is not wealth. The opposite of poverty, I see it as justice. And I think that's what the Lions Club International is doing, ensuring that those people who are seen to be poor don't have to be wealthy to live. They just need justice to live. That's what they need. They need justice. They need access. They need the barriers to be removed because they actually are co-owners of the wealth of every country. And therefore, if you think of it that way, that's what kind of drives my life, to see how do we remove barriers so that those who are seen as poor actually don't have to be wealthy to overcome poverty. They just need justice to overcome poverty and have a valuable life. So that's what I would like to say, Anne. But in terms of mentorship, it's actually a difficult thing to reflect on. My mother had a very big part to play in my life. She still does. She's still alive. She's now 86. My father passed on a few years ago. My mother taught me the key values of discipline and service. That's what she did. So she still remains the one who set the foundation for my life. And therefore, I can say that she mentored me. She mentors me until now. But I tend to think of success as a non-linear event. It's non-linear, and I see that as I grow up, I've learned from so many people, including you, Anne. We were in school together. I don't know how many of you know that Anne and I were in school together. We were in campus at the same time. She was doing dentistry. I was doing medicine. I always thought she was an extremely beautiful woman, and I still think so to date. And we engaged a lot, and we did a lot of work, and we talked. And in those conversations, you mentored me, and I have been mentored by other people that we talked with, including our communities. I see mentorship a kind of non-linear, like it's peer-driven. people who report to you can mentor you, people you report to can mentor you, people who are your peers can mentor you. Community engagement, mentors you. So I would say that my mother had a big role. My brother, who is the Vice Chancellor at the University of Nairobi, who was older than me, is the one who probably led me to do medicine because he had a passion for animal anatomy, and he would dig out dogs that had died in the neighborhood and put them up in the room where we slept, and put a wire through the entire vertebra bone. And I got a lot of passion for this, and I think that actually led me to thinking about human medicine. So in a way also I would say that he mentored my early days. We continue to engage a lot, and we are we engage a lot and exchange a lot of ideas. So I think that's what I would like to say and hand over back to you, Anne. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Gitahi. Edna, who is Edna?
Thank you again. It's impressive panel, and thank you for the invite. So if I step back and try to describe myself, I am a Kenyan by birth and a citizen of the world by choice. I am a chemist by training. This is important for me because the fact that I chose to pursue a PhD in chemistry has really shaped my life. I am passionate about people and helping them fulfill their full potential. And if I were to use some adjectives to describe myself, I am adventurous, courageous, fiercely independent, curious, impatient, optimistic, driven, and fun-loving. So a bunch of things that describe me. And similar to a few of you, I step back and say, who has mentored me? I'm fortunate that from the time I entered the corporate world, I have been approached by people who offered to mentor me, even before I knew what mentorship fully was, even before I was able to appreciate that. And over the years, if it works, because there's chemistry when someone reaches out to you, if that mentorship relationships works for you, I just continue to accumulate. I don't leave people who have mentored me. So I have a diverse range of peers, leaders within my organization, as well as people outside of my organization that I can turn to for mentorship. And I continue to do that over the years up to this day. And for inspiration, like a number of you, it's actually my father. So for me, I step back, I look at my father, fortunate to still have him. He's 92 years old, and he was one of the individuals who established the banking industry in Kenya, Mr. Sam Ambundo. And I'm fortunate to have had him and had the opportunity to observe him up front, see how he leads, then and now. And if I step back and say who has inspired me from a leadership perspective, it really is my father.
Thank you very much, Edna, and thank you to all the panelists. Now we know a bit more about you. And now we're going to go into really what has made you guys leaders that you are. There must be something that you have done right. So Marion, I want you to tell us, we say that an entrepreneurial mindset is a key leadership skill in this century. Do you agree? And if so, can you expound?
And when we think of entrepreneurial mindset as a set of skills that makes people identify and make the best of opportunities, overcome and learn from setbacks, I agree that a mindset of an entrepreneur is important, and you can succeed in a variety of settings when you know how to come back and when you know how to take advantage of opportunities. So it's a critical component in any leadership context, whether you're leading a business or leading a family or leading anything else. So I do agree.
Thank you very much. Gitahi, leadership is dynamic. So in this fast transforming marketplace, what values, in your view, are key to drive industry, country, and community now and beyond?
Thanks, Anne. How interesting to listen to everyone here. These are really interesting perspectives to hear from each other. I tend to think, the first thing I want to say here is that I tend to think that leadership is not a discipline, unlike management. Leadership is not a discipline. And the reason I say that is that whereas a discipline is something that you go to a faculty, at school, and you get taught. Leadership is not such. And I have never seen, I've worked for many organizations. I now head a global organization, 1,500 employees. I've never seen a JD, a job description for leadership, but I've seen many job descriptions for management, but I've never seen one for leadership, because leadership is an attitude that you carry along. Leadership, in my view, is actually a collection, is a competence of a collective of our individual experiences, personalities, attitudes, empathy, and all those other things, experiences and passions. That's what it is, and that's why it can be a discipline. And that's why, in my view, even when I look at values, leadership values, I reflect on, last year when I turned 50, I actually did document my own leadership lessons, and I documented 50 of them. It was a big challenge to get through to 50 lessons, and any of you can have a look at that, because I've actually made that public. And I tend to look at all these experiences as what has been my result of leadership. I never went to any leadership school. And when I look at that, I say that actually, in my view, there are no bad leaders and good leaders. I think we actually get it wrong. We tend to say so-and-so is a bad leader. In my view, they are either leaders or non-leaders. So you may have non-leaders in leadership positions, and therefore we say they're bad leaders. They're not bad leaders, because leaders are developed out of their personality, empathy, experiences. So you can't have a bad leader, because then that wasn't a leader to begin with. So I tend to think of the dichotomy as leaders and non-leaders. And therefore, when I look at the values you're asking of those leaders, I would say that empathy is at the top of it for changing where we are right now. And that's why you see that people are empathetic, understand the situation of the people they are leading. People are empathetic, understand the conditions. People are empathetic, put themselves in the skin of those people they are leading and understand. And that doesn't matter whether you're leading a family, a community organization, a large organization like Marion and Manoj are running, and what Edna is doing with Colgate-Palmolive. Even when you're in a family, you must wear the skin of empathy. That supports. That's a key value for leadership. The other thing is vulnerability, and we don't think of vulnerability as a value of leadership. Vulnerability is a critical value of leadership, because it actually lets you, vulnerability means that you've actually given up your power to the people you're leading. And giving up power to the people you lead actually enhances their following, enhances the understanding of your vision. And I don't think and that's why I say people who are non-leaders don't give up their power to the people they are leading. But leaders are vulnerable, and they give up their power to the people they are leading, because then you are on the same platform and you understand each other. And of course, the fact that leadership is service is critical. And finally, decisiveness, that when you're in this leadership, people who are leaders are also decisive, because you're selling a vision, and that vision has to be achieved. And that decisiveness is not something you're taught. And that's why I said leadership is not a discipline. So I hope I've kind of made a valuable response to your question. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gitahi. And interesting, you said that leadership is an attitude. And I'll just carry on from what you said about one of the values you think a leader should have is vulnerability. And I'll come to you, Manoj, and ask, how do you feel that traits like empathy and vulnerability have played a role in your leadership?
Thank you very much. And I think Dr. Gitahi was very passionate as he talked about empathy and vulnerability. But to me, our life sits atop the building blocks of time, and our actions today give rise to our tomorrows. Every endeavor in our life commands leadership. I feel the SQ and the RQ are important facets in our leadership roles. Service quotient and resilience quotient. Empathy needs to run in our veins. I feel good to be blessed, but better to be a blessing. And I think of this every day. We are someone in the world, but for someone, we are the world. world. The second trait of vulnerability is also quite crucial. I love looking eye to eye every storm that comes into my life. And this has been a regular feature in my last 45 years journey as being an entrepreneur. Also, control over one's emotion is the need of the present times. I feel no event in life is so terrible that one cannot rise above it. So traits like empathy and vulnerability definitely play a role in your being an effective leader or in any leadership role. Back to you, Dr. L.
Thank you very much, Dr. Manoj. Edna, given all these attributes we've been given of leaders, so what has been one of your greatest challenge as a leader?
Yeah, I really had to stop and reflect over my leadership experiences and say, you know, where were the things, where did I struggle the most? What are the things that made me really pause and take a step back and reflect? And I would say for me, one of the biggest challenges is ensuring that my team or my organization remains relevant. Because it's so easy, especially when we're at the top of our games, to get comfortable, to get complacent. And there's no need to change, right? When you're at the top of the game, you're delivering, team seems like nothing could go wrong. That's when perhaps you are most at risk. So I would say ensuring that you keep abreast of what's happening in the external environment, understanding the shifts you need to make within the organization to ensure that you remain relevant. And then perhaps the biggest challenge is getting the organization to make the shifts before they sense or even see the need. Because we as leaders, that's our call. Our call is to make sure we're not just operating today, that we are ready to operate and be competitive in future. So for me, constantly thinking to myself, have we gone far enough? Are we ready? What's the next challenge coming around the corner? What do we need to do to prepare? How do I start to rally the organization? Do I have the right people on the team? For me, perhaps the biggest challenge is that is ensuring that I'm constantly my team is ready to for what's coming around the bend. So yeah, that would perhaps be my biggest challenge.
Okay, thank you very much, Edna. So Dr. Manoj, listening to all the speakers this afternoon, you've all touched on what attributes that a leader would require. And Dr. Githinji has told us there are no bad leaders, because I think the term bad leader is an oxymoron. So Dr. Manoj, maybe you can just briefly tell us, just summarize for us, what are these attributes? And also just tell us what is lacking in our current leaders, because I don't want to use the word bad leader. Githinji has said there's no such term. So just tell us, what are those attributes we should look for even as we elect our leaders, and what is wrong with the current leaders?
Thank you very much, Anne. And I totally agree with Dr. Gitahi that there are really no bad leaders. And in my personal experience of over 46 years, the most important attributes of successful leaders today are vast vision, perfect planning, immaculate execution, boundless faith, ingenious innovation, and hunger for deserved success. And even if some of these attributes are applied to leadership, it leads to success. However, qualities seen lacking in general are procrastination, grit and determination, casual approach, and being content too early. And when we look at some of these qualities that are lacking in general, it does not tantamount to bad leadership. It is just quality in a leader that does not lead him to be a success. Back to you, Anne.
Thank you very much, Dr. Manoj. I think from this panel, we will stop talking about bad leaders and ensure that we have leaders that have those qualities that you are very well espoused. Githinji, we live in a very hostile social media environment What challenges do you get from this environment as a leader, the social media environment?
Well, this is actually a very interesting question, Dr. Ann. And let me reflect on something that happened more recently. So we hold this, because one of the things which maybe I did mention earlier is communication as a very key value for you to continue your passion and vision to the people that you're leading. And I hold a quarterly town hall, virtually, of course, because we are in 35 countries, different countries across the world, and we have 1,500 staff, and therefore we can never ever think of coming together into one place. So we hold a quarterly town hall. And in the quarterly town hall, I used to feel like I'm talking to a black hole, because you can imagine you're talking to all these people. None of them has their video on, maybe a few people, the rest of them are just, and you're talking and talking, and you talk for 2 hours and then you finish. And, you don't know what their feelings were, what they were thinking about what you're saying, whether they appreciate what you're saying or they understand it at all. As you learn in Communication 101, communication is understanding. Communication is not sending out a memo or saying something. It is when the person you're talking to understands what you're saying. That's Communications 101. And therefore I say to my team, I said, why don't we actually create an anonymous platform? And now, because of social media and technology, there are very many. So we picked one called Slido. And we said, we are going to issue this to all the staff. And every time before the town hall, we are going to ask the staff, send the link and ask them to write anonymous views, comments, questions, so that we can then, during the town hall, address them. Because then we feel like we're actually addressing what matters to the people. And what happened after that is that there was a lot of anxiety. Because when the people started writing, because they're anonymous, there are things which were said which people felt. In fact, I remember one of my very senior staff breaking up in tears and saying, my God, I didn't know this is what people say about me. This is so terrible, And at some point it was so bad that people said, maybe we should stop this Slido thing. We should just stop it because people are misusing it. People are attacking others on it. And I said, no way, we are not stopping it. What we need to ask ourselves is, why is it that people are feeling that way? That is social media. So social media is not hostile. Social media is a reflection of what people think about us, people would say about us, their mental conversations about us, what they think about our policies, and what they think about the way we treat them or the way we treat ourselves. So that's the way I look at social media. That's not a hostile environment. It's actually our look of ourselves in the mirror. And therefore, when we feel people are being hostile, we must look then inside of ourselves and ask ourselves, what has resulted in this view I'm seeing in the mirror? So in a way, it is actually a record of people's mental conversations that they would have had even without displaying them on social media. They would have said those things about you, and they would have said them around the corridors, they would have said them in the bar, they would have said them in the church, they would have said them in their family behind closed doors. So social media just gives us a mirror of what people are thinking about us. And if we see it that way, then it is a continuous opportunity for us to reflect upon ourselves and say, why did that person say about? Maybe I'm not communicating, and maybe I need to communicate better, or maybe I need to look for different channels to communicate. Thank you, Anne.
So are you saying what we see on social media about us, the reflection of us, that we don't have haters who will just want to say bad things about you?
That's a very good question. If you have, everyone would know that you can never have a murder declared by a judge without a motive. It can never be a murder unless there's a motive. Human beings are driven by motives. And therefore, even when the person you think is a hater, you must find out what is the motive behind why they became a hater. So if you think of it that way, that you can never have a murder without a motive, because it's known that human beings operate out of motive. So somebody who's being a hater, why are they being a hater? Maybe they are competitive against something that you're doing. Maybe they don't believe in your position. Maybe they're trying to overcome some certain challenges that are in their life. So as soon as you see it that way, then we focus not on the person we call the hater, we focus on finding the motive.
Thank you very much. Those are very interesting perspectives. So Marion, I know I have been working with you in this pandemic, in the crisis that we have been in. So it says that crisis brings out true leaders. Do you agree?
Dr. Annan, it's been a pleasure to work with you. I know that you've shown us your patience as well and resilience as we try to do the best that in a pandemic. A crisis is really a test on leadership. Even at home, it's a test on your leadership capability across the board. So leaders being planners and visionaries and people who make strategy and who also do big picture thinking, required to be adaptable when a new situation comes up, like this pandemic. So a crisis does really test leadership, and it brings out your resilience and how you actually act in terms of crisis. Of course, during a pandemic which has been somehow endless, we have come out and noticed even within ourselves that we're actually stronger and braver and more resilient than we can even imagine. And when you think about the coming months and the coming year, if this pandemic continues, we'll still be called upon to rise up to crisis and to arrange ourselves and our work a lot better, and to lead our people with courage and resilience. People always say it's always lonely at the top, and it is indeed, because you can really display yourself in a way that gives people comfort other than makes them feel worse. So it is a test of courage, Dr. Ria.
Thank you very much. So if as a leader you haven't gone through a crisis, you're not quite there. That's the message I get, because then we get to see, when the heat is under your seat, then we get to see the real you. Thank you very much, Marion. Edna, we have read your bio, you have traveled the world. So tell us, what's the most important risk you took and why?
So Dr. Githinji, I'm going to one-up you. Anne and I were actually in high school together. We go way, way back. And
wow.
And I say this because I think the biggest risk I took started then. It started when I was in Form 1, when I chose to pursue chemistry. And Anne will tell you, I was crazy about chemistry. I lived, dreamed, ate chemistry. And at the age of 11, I decided that was what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. Never knowing where it would take me, never knowing, what I would end up doing. But I decided then that was what I wanted to do. And it was a bit of a battle because, of course, when you're good in the sciences, your parents want you to be a doctor. Then I said no. And they said, okay, pharmacy. I said no. Okay, vet. I said no. I was so focused on pursuing this thing that I loved, which was chemistry. I went on to University of Nairobi and on to get my PhD. So I think, and not letting opinions or others sway me, even when I didn't really know how this would pan out. In retrospect, actually, it was a pretty good career decision, but not letting any other things sway me. So that led me ultimately to Colgate in the US, which is where I started my first job. I think then, and in turn led me to an opportunity in Mexico. I remember when I got approached to move to Mexico and lead a team there. It was at the height of the narco-terrorism in Mexico. Again, people thought I was crazy. Why would you want to do this? You are alone. Choosing to do that, probably again, one of the best decisions of my life. It's enriched me, not just professionally, but personally. I'm a better person as a result of that. Coming back to the US, and then most recently, I would say, choosing to do the job that I'm doing currently, where I am the first female in the role to lead this organization, and I'm the first non-Indian in this role again. And even when I spoke to those around, some were of the opinion that it wasn't a good move for me. So I would say that first decision was when I was 11, but it has set me on the path to make a number of choices along the way that others considered risky, that have ultimately been really good for me professionally, excellent for me personally, and that I have never regretted.
Thank you very much, Edna. So Githinji, since you and Edna are competing about who has known me longer, I will come back to you. What is one decision you wish you didn't make?
Wow,
Decision you made.
That's a difficult one, because as I said, when I recorded my lessons, I did mention that decisions are conscious, and therefore decisions must never be regretted. And therefore, I can never regret a decision I made. But if you put me in a corner and ask me, there's a conscious decision you made, but you shouldn't have made it, and therefore, what is that? In 2012, I decided to start a business. And I started a business. At that point, it was, I had worked in the Nation Media Group, so I had fairly good experience of the media. And the major event that was happening in 2012 was that devolution was starting. And I felt like devolution is going to require local newspapers. And those local newspapers are going to be the major advertising platforms for counties. They're going to be the main source of news. Actually, if you look at the US where Edna Ambundo started, they are, the regional or state newspapers are actually the strongest, the New York Times and all these kind of things. And I really felt there was actually this big need. What I didn't know is that, Kenya is a very small market, and therefore each county is just like the other. And therefore I put in a lot of money through 2012, 13, 14, 15. And at the end of the day, I had to wrap it up after losing significant savings. And at that point, getting into some debt, I was trying to balance it out. And I think that was one decision I made consciously. But I look back and I'm like, maybe I should have done something different. If I had done more analysis, I probably would have put my investment elsewhere. But a decision made is a conscious thing and therefore must never be regretted. But that would be my answer to your question.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So Manoj, I'm going to come to you following up on what Githinji has told us. Success or failure of any organization rests on its leadership. In your view, why do firms collapse? And we also say that success has many fathers, but failure is an orphan. So just give us your insights as you comfort Githinji for the loss he made.
Yes, please, Manoj, please comfort me. Thank you.
Gitahi, I do sympathize with you, and I know that sometimes failing it's really a big stress on any individual. And I've gone through this journey many, many times, and I'll come to it in a moment. But just to answer the question simply, is a lot of firms collapse due to inadequate planning and disproportionate effort when compared to the goals. Many companies have big goals, but the efforts that they put in to achieve these goals, really, it's deemed to be desired. A lot of firms face difficulties to match the global standards and competition. And this is so true for many of us in Kenya. And I'm sure Dr. Gitahi must have gone through that journey also of competition. As I said earlier, developing resilience quotient is the new mantra for success. Be resilient in whatever you want to accomplish or achieve, and that is the new mantra for success. However, it is difficult to accept accountability and responsibility for any failure. So failure to me is an orphan. But I also firmly believe that every adversity carries with it the seeds of an equivalent benefit. Adverse conditions faced help us carve a pathway of attitude and altitude in life. And just to share a similar experience like Dr. Gitahi, and especially what has transpired in the last 18 months because of the COVID pandemic, we have seen a lot of successes. At the same time, we have seen a lot of failures. And those that have been successful in this pandemic times are the ones who have thought outside the box, have portrayed strong leaderships, have found new ways of surviving, and they have led the way to be successful. However, many along the way have fallen down and become failures. And these are the orphans that we are talking about here today. And just like Gitahi, during the beginning of the pandemic in March 2020, our group and I myself also faced similar challenges. We had to shut down a complete hotel and send 400 people at home. You can only imagine how painful that is. However, we were resilient. We did not want to give up. And we looked after all the 400 people that we sent home, trying to redeploy them in other avenues so it could help them sustain themselves and their families. However, within the last 12 months, we have been able to recover, and out of those 400, 280 have already got their jobs restored back. And we are hoping that by the end of this year, the rest of them will be back on their feet and the hotel will be up and running like normal again. But if we had lost hope, what would have happened in this turbulent times? At the same time, like Dr. Gitahi, we invested into a factory in Mombasa. Right at the end of 2019, the pandemic struck. There was no way we could run that brand new factory. And the only option we had was to close it down and sell it, hence at a loss that was also very painful. So when we talk about successes, we can see a lot of successes, but when we look at failures, failures are certainly those orphans. Back to you, Anne.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Manoj. Hope and resilience is a message you're giving us. So I hope, Githinji, you're comforted. And Marion, I'll come to you. Do you have an example of a mistake that you have made as you lead your organization? Do you have anything to report like Manoj and Githinji have said? And as you answer that, I want you to tell me, once a leader has made a mistake and has failed, is it a sign of weakness to admit that mistake, even to your juniors? Marion?
Dr. Anne, I actually have that t-shirt. I also did start a business that was a classic failure, but I won't get into that. We've already been comforted by Dr. Manoj. I've made many mistakes and I will make more. I think that's where resilience and authentic leadership actually comes from. And in the process of leading and living my life, I often take on unnecessary work, and there are many examples of that, and perhaps not see some key issues or call them early enough. And part of the reason my business failed was actually not pulling the plug early enough. And I suppose it's quite common, and I think it will come up in this conversation, that as women leaders, we default to doing instead more than delegating some work, and we grow as we grow in leadership, we delegate more and we trust more. But we can't leave this conversation without talking about reaching senior management roles as mothers, as wives, as women. We can be in quite some precarious positions that can cause us to fail. For example, when I lived in Zambia, I took on a company that was going to fail. Everybody knew that they had pulled all the money from the company, and I still said no. I'm ready for my role as a turnaround CEO. So, there's a glass cliff and its cousin glass ceiling. There's a glass everywhere, and other invisible associated barriers. But admitting mistakes and coming back is one of the most liberating practices that I have found to be true, I think, for both men and women. And during this COVID crisis, and I don't know whether you know it, I have had so many impactful stories. I've cried many times, sometimes in public, which is what a human being does. I think that my team at BOC, when we received the last oxygen shipments, which were came at the nick of time, I just cried. They didn't know what to do with a woman who's crying next to them. But you become human, and then you step back and say, this is how I feel, and I'm going to be real about this. And going back, and I think that's what we talked about earlier, about managing a crisis and being authentic. We cannot lead our lives as leaders or as role models to anybody without admitting mistakes. And mistakes will always happen. So we just have to have the courage make the best decision with not all the facts that we have, and then when you make a mistake, you call it back and admit publicly that you made a mistake, and this is how you're going to correct it. So I'm not the shy one to admit that haven't made a mistake, and have made many, and that's where resilience and authentic leadership comes from.
Thank you very much, Marion. I'm sure our audience is learning that even those who are at the top have had their fair share of mistakes, and that's life. So Edna, I want to come to you, even as we talk about admitting mistakes. So what are the daily ways you keep your team on track with the mission and vision of the organization? And how do you make sure the team is motivated, even when there are conflicts in there?
So I'll start first by saying, talking about mission, a little bit about mission and vision, because I believe mission and vision needs to be relevant, compelling, and meaningful to your team or organization. We shouldn't look at them as those nice words that are on a poster that hang by the entrance to your office, right? Those words that everybody sees and nobody remembers, and oftentimes nobody understands. You should make sure that these words are things that your organization can relate to. They need to be central to how your organization lives, breathes, operates. I think that's one way to make it very relevant. If your people within your organization can connect to the mission and vision, see how what they do in their role. It could be, in my case, the analyst, the microbiology analyst in the back office. It could be the formulator on the forefront. It could be the toxicologist who's screening ingredients, raw materials. All of them need to understand how what they do ultimately contributes to that mission and vision of the organization. So I think we often, we have these beautiful sounding statements that, they look and sound good, but are meaningless. If we ask our team, what does this mean? They can't even really tell you what this means. So, even within my organization, we have a broader mission and vision for Colgate, but within my organization, we have an aspiration. Similar to a vision. We have an aspiration. What do we, the India organization, aspire to be? And how do the individuals within the organization contribute to that aspiration? So for me, how you do it and is to make it central to what you do day in, day out, and find ways, make sure that your team is able to understand how their piece of what they do fits into that bigger picture. Now, with issues, I'm known for calling a spade a spade. I say, let's have the conversation. You have the issue, let's talk it out. And where possible, we hash it out in public. Sometimes it's appropriate to do that. If not, then we have the one-on-one and say, hey, what's going on with you? Help me understand. I see this and this, the other. What is there something that I can do? What's going on in your head with you that can get you past this? So typically, I'm one who tackles the issues head on. I don't shy away from them. I actually kind of enjoy it. I'll do it in a forum where appropriate, but I don't shy away from doing it one-on-one when needed. I think as leaders, it is critical we address the issues, otherwise they fester and they become these wounds that can ultimately negatively impact our organization. So we cannot sweep it under the rug and hope that it'll take care of itself. So it's our job as leaders to make sure that we do it in a constructive way, but that we deal with the issues as they arise. Back to you, Anne.
Thank you very much, Edna. So forthright is one quality of leadership that I'm hearing, that you need to get out there and speak your mind. So Githinji, given what Edna has said, is there a time in your career that you were scared, and a time that you needed to face something but you were scared? And then even as you tell us that experience, then is there something that you wish someone had told you during your career journey?
Thank you, Anne, and thanks, Edna and Manoj and Marion, for sharing very kind of vulnerable moments that we have all gone through as we lead our various people and organizations. It's very inspiring to know that, we are not alone. We are, many of us, going through the same things. The first thing is that I'm always scared. And I'm always scared to be carrying a person who has not bought into the vision. That's my biggest care in any career. Because the moment you have somebody who has not bought into your vision, then they become a distraction to the achievement of the vision. So that's my living nightmare at any one time. And you'll find me talking to staff, going down to the community, just find, so that you find that last person who may not have bought the vision, and then you sell the vision to them. And if they don't buy it, then you have to let them go. And those are the conversations that Edna is talking about, that you have to have those conversations that if you have people who have not bought in the vision, you should respectfully face them and let them go, because then they become a distraction. The worst you can do is have in your bus somebody who doesn't believe in the destination where you're going, because they'll keep pulling the bus back. That's critically important. But there's something else you asked. You asked around whether there's something I should have been told. And I tend to think about that. I've learned a lot through my journey. And one thing that actually I have learned over time is that for you to be a leader, you must never carry a conflict of interest. And I think that was not told to me early enough. That if you carry a conflict of interest, these difficult conversations that we are having here can never be had. I'll give an example. When I joined my first job, I'm grateful that my first boss, I graduated, we graduated around 1996 or so. Now people know how old you are. So after graduation, we went to do internship, and then we had, I applied to work at one organization, and one of the people actually I forgot to mention who actually mentored me very early, called Dr. Amit Thacker. Dr. Amit told me, he was, my senior, his only employee, told me, never have an office relationship. That's what Amit told me. In a different forum, I would have said it the way he told me in the language, but this is a public forum, so I'll leave that out. But he told me never have an office relationship. And at that point, I was very young. I think I was 28 or so. So I was married, didn't matter to me. But later, I discovered what you're saying. And having an office relationship is just an example of conflict. But there are many other forms of conflict. Conflict could be a favor to somebody who is a supplier, a favor to a staff, a favor to either somebody junior or senior. And let me tell you, you can never have a difficult conversation as long as you have a conflict of interest. So that is something I wish I knew deeply more a long time ago. And now it's emerging in the large issue that we are calling safeguarding. And it's emerging that, when you have these issues, especially because there are power balances, we are now seeing issues coming up. WHO recently accused in DR Congo. We saw what happened. It has happened to many companies because of conflict of interest. And those conflicts can be financial, can be sexual, can be whatever form, but never have a conflict of interest. It will dilute your leadership influence and you'll not be able to lead.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Gitahi. Following up on that, Marion, as you employ, I'm sure you have a lot of employees in your organization. Are there any thought-provoking questions you ask them? And also along the lines that Gitahi has said, make sure there's no conflict of interest within this setting?
I'm actually quite glad that Dr. Gitahi has brought up, situations, or what people call these days situationships, where you have conflict of interest, and you can't then make a balanced decision that is for the good of the business. Because we are called to serve in the companies we work in, and we are called to serve in the societies that we are in right now, even as Lions. So the question that I often ask the employees is, what would you do if this was your business? What would you actually do if this was your business in this particular situation? On the hiring call, I always think that I really should hire for attitude, because when it comes to learning content and technical work, that's an easier issue to handle. But a bad attitude is a cancer that you struggle with. And when I'm presented with final candidates, I always check within myself whether the candidate is having a higher EQ and a proper attitude that is learning and that will accommodate the dynamics of the corporate world. So those are thought-provoking questions that I would ask employees who are within the business and the ones that are coming in.
Okay, thank you very much, Marion. We will be running a bit beyond the time that we had allocated. So I beg your indulgence for maybe a bit 15 more minutes at the top of the hour. And at this point, I just want to take some of the questions that I am seeing in the chat so that our audience knows that we are with them. So Edwin Mulwa is asking, what is the panel's thought on the value of emotional intelligence on leadership? Gitahi, you want to take that? Emotional intelligence on leadership.
I would say it's everything. It's actually the foundation of leadership. And I think Manoj talked about it. It's a foundation of leadership. And that's where it starts. And if you don't have emotional intelligence, then you are not able to balance your empathy. You're not able to balance the attitude that we talked about. So I would say it's foundational.
Okay. Then Githinji, there was a very specific question to you from Mwambeti. She's asking, can you please expound on what you said about give up your power to those you lead?
Yeah, I kind of answered it on the chat, but I'll explain for other people. What I mean by this is that when we lead, we must find out what power we own. What is the power we have over those we are leading? And we can define it in many ways. For politicians, it is the power they have, the political power they have. I would say probably for others, it's knowledge, that I have so much knowledge over the people I lead. For others could be, many forms of power. So you have to define first, what's your form of power? Once you define that power, then you must give it to the people. Because if, for example, you're a political leader, you must give political decision-making to the people. If you are a decision maker, Manoj is running a big company, so is Edna, so is Marion. If your power is decision-making on budget allocation, give it over to the people. Let them make decisions on budget. So you have to define what form of power you're holding and then make a deliberate decision to actually devolve it. That's the concept of devolution. And then when you do that, when you devolve the form of power, then you are able to share that power and therefore lead the people towards a destination. That's what I meant by that.
Okay. Thanks. Thank you very much. Dr. Manoj, there is a question for you. Is there anything you do in your personal time that helps you to be a leader in your career? And what does work-life balance mean to you?
Thank you very much. That's a very, very interesting question. And I'm sure my colleague panelist, Marion, Dr. Gitahi and Edna will agree with me that being a leader is many a time very stressful and it takes a toll on your mental health. So the answer is that yes, in my personal time, I really do something, and of late, surprisingly, I have started yoga with my daughter, which is helping me to be more of myself. I could never imagine the magic of yoga and what it does to you, especially as a stressful leader in building your career. One needs to be a perfect custodian of the 1,440 minutes that we get in a day. And I attribute my success to time management and planning. And many of you on the platform who know me, I am a stickler for time, and I also am a stickler for planning. I firmly believe that it's not the big things that you do make the big difference. It's the small things that you do that make the big difference. Also, I feel work-life balance is everything to me. In fact, I am extremely lucky to have my life partner, Jaina, and my daughter, Soyam, stand beside me as a pillar of strength and support me in all my endeavors. We do what we love, and we love what we do together. Back to you, Dr. M.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much, Manoj. There's another question here, and it goes to any of the panelists. Maybe, Edna, you can take this. It's asking what Nathaniel Mugai is asking. What would be your advice to the younger generation willing and ready to work with little or no opportunities for jobs?
This is a tough one, a tough one, Nathaniel. It's been a while since I was in that situation. But what I would say is don't give up. Don't give up. You have to keep putting yourself out there. And to the extent possible, if you have a network, leverage your network. And just stay connected. Whether they have a job for you in the moment or not, they may remember, 6 months down the line, something may come up. Tap into your network, tell them you're looking, tell them what you're capable of doing, tell them what you're interested in, and just don't give up. You can't give up. Just stay in there.
Okay, thank you very much. So Gitahi, I'll give this to you. Mercy Gishuki is asking, how do you deal with a bad leader? And she has put bad in quotes because she knows your position on that title. How do you deal with a bad leader who is probably your boss or in a more senior position?
So let us call them a manager instead of a bad leader. Let's say, how do you deal with a manager who is your boss and you think in your view that they're not doing the right thing? So first, there's always two sides to a story, and you always need to also reflect on what actions they are taking, and also reflect on what actions are you taking out of the actions? What are your expectations? Because that's actually one of the biggest things I find is that our expectations are actually the biggest cause of our unhappiness. It's not about the reality, it's the expectations. So you need to look at those expectations and your realities. We actually call it cognitive dissonance, where you expect this, but your reality is different. So you need to look at the environment and say, are they doing actions that are not right? In which case, then, if they're not right, then there should be a policy environment, I would hope. And if there's none, you should be able to actually sit with them and say, I don't like the things you do, or this is not right. If it is actually yourself, then you need to reflect and say, is it my expectations that are actually different from the reality in the organization or from the expectations or the goal that I set? Or is it actually that the environment is not conducive? And depending on the organization, because I don't have those facts, if it's a mature organization, there will be policy frameworks that can allow you to address the issue. If it's not a mature organization and maybe it's a family-owned business or then you may have to have the courage to address in an extremely respectful manner what you don't like about the manager and what they address. Because you know what? Managers are human beings. So you might be scared of talking to them, but they'll actually listen. People, also appreciate feedback. And I think when it's given respectfully, it should be appreciated. That's what I would say without having all the context and the information around the question. Back to you, Anne.
Thank you very much. Manoj, there's another question here from Guido. What should be done so that the upcoming generation may have a service attitude rather than exploiting and greed attitude?
This is a very, very good question. And it's a question that is very, very near to my heart. Sorry, my apologies. Can you hear me, Anne?
Yes, I can.
Right. This is a very, very good question. And especially for young upcoming entrepreneurs and for young upcoming people who want to make it big in the world. Whenever I mentor them, I always tell them that service is an attitude that you must maintain if you want to be successful. It is that particular attitude that will drive you up the success ladder in whatever you strive to do. And in my personal opinion, for every upcoming young person who really wants to make it big in the world, keep in mind that service is aptitude and service is what will lead to your success. Back to you, Anne.
Thank you. Edna, there's a question from you, from Pavi. Pavi Shah is asking, what are resources you would suggest for new leaders?
Oh,
or
yes.
which 5 books would you suggest one should
Absolutely.
read?
So I actually wrote them down. I own them. And because a lot of you have already mentioned emotional intelligence, one of the books that I would recommend is The Emotionally Intelligent Leader by Daniel Goleman. It's a very easy read. It's a small book. I usually have it by my side, oldie but a goodie. Another one that I would recommend is by Marshall Goldsmith, What Got You Here Won't Get You There. Very good book for those who have just gotten into leadership roles, because it tells you about all the successes, the things that have made you successful to get to the leadership role. Some of that you need to drop now when you become a leader. You have to pivot and stop doing some things and start doing others. And the last one is a more recent book, How Women Rise by Sally Helgeson and Marshall Goldsmith. So those 3 books, and I can type them in the chat. The Emotionally Intelligent Leader by Daniel Goleman, What Got You Here Won't Get You There by Marshall Goldsmith, and How Women Rise by Sally Helgeson and Marshall Goldsmith. Those 3 books for me, I would recommend.
Great. Edna, please type them in there so that Pavi can have a look at them. I think those are really, really great books that you have recommended. So I want to come back to Manoj. Kindly share with us the most important leadership lesson or experience that you have, and what is most important to you as a leader.
Personally, for me, I feel overcoming obstacles is one of the most important traits in me. Every soul on this planet has challenges and lessons to learn. We wouldn't be who we are without them. More successful the person is in his life, it certainly indicates that he has surmounted a great degree of ordeals in the journey. I could share 1,000 examples of why I feel overcoming obstacles is the most important trait to me. But this evening, because of time, I would just like to share one small example that Marion and Dr. Gitahi will also agree with me, and that is, in the recent times, the unavailability of oxygen. And running a big institute and a big hospital like the MP Shah Hospital, with a hospital full of COVID patients, I'm sure Dr. Gitahi has been in a similar position, and our godsend Marion has been there to save us all. How do we overcome this obstacle? By providing sufficient oxygen and getting oxygen in the time of needs to serve all these COVID patients and really make sure that we save their lives. And really, we have overcome these obstacles in one and many ways. And what I firmly believe, that for every leader, it's not knowing that you have an obstacle that is important. It is how you overcome that obstacle, which is more important, and that will make you a strong leader. And that is a value that I feel every leader should really embrace. Back to you, Anne.
Thank you very much, Manoj. Marion, I've heard the phrase burden of leadership. What does it mean?
Dr. Annan, I think the reflection of burden of leadership has been discussed indirectly on this forum. And when you think about it, is making choices and decisions, sometimes making a choice between a bad choice and a worse choice. And in these oxygen times, you could make actually the better choice of the bad choice, but deciding anyway. And for me, deciding with 75% known facts and moving forward with not knowing everything is one of the things that makes me know that the burden of leadership can actually get a bit lighter. I think the burden is lessened by staying grounded in knowing that you sustain the dignity and respect for others, especially now when you see patients and the balance of oxygen and non-oxygen and other solutions. When you think that you've done your best in sustaining their dignity and respect for others, then you've borne that burden of leadership well. But the burden of leadership is also just the weight that you see all the panelists today talking about feeling responsible for the vision, hoping of being afraid that you're carrying people in your company that don't believe in the vision of the company, and trying to bring them along. It can be burdensome. But in this new world of connections and networks of people around the world, there are support systems all over the world to support us, to keep leading, even when you know that you sometimes have to make a decision between a bad choice and a worse choice. Dr. Anne.
Thank you very much. I've heard of women make better leaders, men make better leaders. And so, Githinji, I want to hear from you. Is there a gender dimension to leadership? And I also will ask Edna to also add on to that, so that we get from a man and a woman whether there's truly a gender dimension to leadership. Githinji, you go first.
Simple answer is yes, Dr. Nyanga. Simple answer is yes.
Let Githinji go first.
Marion is trying to influence my answer, but let me give my answer first. Let me first take a kind of a neurologist view, or a mind view, or a biological view. So the first thing I want to say is this, that women are, this is not like predominantly, or that's what it is, but women are known to be more right brain thinkers. And men are known to be more left brain thinkers. Now, what does that mean? The right brain, by study, is more visual, it is artistic, it is emotional, it appreciates contexts. So if you look at art or music, it understands music. So all of us have a right brain. It's not like this gender doesn't have this right brain and the other one has this. And the left brain is very logical, it's calculative, it's analytical. So those two features are critically important for leadership. However, women are more predominantly right-brained, and while men are more predominantly left-brained. So maybe using that, you can then say that if leadership is about the collective experiences, empathy, emotion, attitude, and all those things, then you can say that actually women have an advantage over men when you look at leadership. Management may be different because then you're looking at analytical decision-making, logic. This is why when I talk about this topic, I tell people, if your wife goes to buy a fridge, she is more likely to bring a fridge that's more beautiful, that fits into the household, that is actually reflective of the colors of your curtains. Whereas a man looking for a fridge is more likely to bring one that's long-lasting, that is cheaper, that has a bigger power of the compressor. And this is the same when you're buying a car. This is the same even when we are buying our children toys. This kind of mentality reflects the kind of things that we do. So if leadership is really about empathy and all these other things, then women have an advantage over men when you look at this feature of leadership. But then it's important to also say that that there are barriers to women leadership. And this is really the issue that needs to be addressed. That whereas women may have an advantage over men, there are barriers to women leadership because of society, because of culture, because of religion, because of norms. And this thing we keep calling the glass ceiling, like Marion reflected, I was asking recently, who put the glass ceiling there? Because we need to find that person to remove it. Because this glass ceiling is actually societal. It is actually societal. And the question then is, how do we enable full realization of the potential of women in leadership by removing the barriers actively? Those barriers could be constitutional. Those barriers could be HR policies or human resource policies in our organizations that actually say things that limit women in leadership. So these are the things that we need to look at so that we can actually remove the barriers. Because eventually, and as I conclude, when we talk about leadership, I can actually tell you anecdotally, but almost truthfully, that majority of families are led by women. It is the women leadership that guides families. So if we were to expand our view of leadership beyond organizational leadership, and we look at leadership more widely, there are more women leaders in families than there are men. So it is actually the organization of barriers that stop the realization of female leadership. I think I would like to stop there so that I don't get too controversial.
Thank you. Edna?
I applaud you, Dr. Githinji. That, you know, well done, well stated. And I will tackle it based on also something that you mentioned, societal norms, right? Most cultures have gender norms. And typically women are primary caregivers, are seen as primary caregivers within those societal norms. And what this means is that, you know, it's made over time, it's made women more attuned to the needs of others. It's made us generally more collaborative in our approach because we needed it. We needed to be as such. It oftentimes has made us more keen listeners. And so all of these aspects, I believe, play into us as leaders when we ascend to those roles. There are also negatives. I think as Marion said, we tend to do more than delegate, something that we have to learn as women, especially as we rise, we still want to do. So I think there is a gender influence in leaders. Does it make women better leaders than men? I don't think so, because I think, you know, the listening, the being attuned to the needs of others and empathetic are things that can, being collaborative are things that can be learned by either gender. I think on the flip side, there are things that women, just based on society as well, that hinder us. So we tend to be less assertive. Men are raised to be a little bit more assertive. Assertive women sometimes are perceived in a certain way. And so we have to also learn how to overcome that as women. So I think there are things that are inherent within both genders to us that can either enhance or hinder us as leaders. I think it's about being aware that we bring that to the table as individuals when we step into these leadership roles, and recognizing what is useful. It's going to be critical for us as leaders, and what we need to magnify, amplify, and what we need to minimize. And I think that's the same case on for both genders. We just need to be aware of what we're bringing to the table.
Okay, thank you very much. So Manoj, since we have a tie, we don't know whether it's men or women who are better leaders. Just tell us then, what are the best ways that leaders can support each other? You know, whether you work in the same organization or in a different organization, whether you're a man or a woman, how do you support each other?
I'm a firm believer that leaders can support other leaders, whether in within the same organization or different organization. And the ways that leaders can support other leaders, number one, is to be clear in your communications. Clarity in communication is the key to success. Secondly, planning to the T. This is absolutely important, as I mentioned earlier on. Great teamwork and regular discussions will surely help leaders support each other. Only those who risk going too far can possibly find out how far one can go. And once again, just to conclude, the key to success is communication. If you can communicate effectively amongst leaders, there is nothing that can defeat success. Back to you, Anne.
Thank you, communication. So I'll take the last question on the chat. The rest have been answered. Mercy is asking, and I think Githinji had alluded to this, what's the difference between a leader and a manager?
I think as I said it, from my point of view, is that leadership is not a discipline that you are taught, but management is a discipline. You need to learn the principles of management, what is to manage and how, you know, what does it mean? But leadership is, has no job description. It is a collective experience of your personality, your empathy, your attitudes, your experiences, your knowledge, your passions, and that cannot be taught in a classroom. That is something, and that's why in every society, irrespective of level of education, you find leaders. We found leaders in the colonial war against the colonialists. We found leaders. They were not taught. They were not taken to school. You find, if you go to the market, your local market, you'll find leaders. They are, market people who organize others, who actually go and talk to leadership when there's a leaked sewage and they make sure the sewage is corrected. Those are not managers, those are leaders. Managers are different. The manager is the person who is employed to run the market, to ensure the receipts are cut on time and people pay, and those may or may not be leaders.
Thank you very much. I think we have had a great afternoon from our panelists. I'm sure our audience, you will agree with me. You have learned a lot, and now we are winding up, and I will ask each panelist to give us their parting shot, and I will start with Marion.
Dr. Kanga, my parting shot is, given what we've discussed today, is that leadership is about being yourself and being authentic and humble and generous in the way that what you've been given. And I always say the same thing: be yourself, know what you're good at by allowing yourself to do more than is asked of you, even though you can balance that. Ask for feedback often and evaluate it for your continuous growth, and help other people for the sake of your soul. In short, I just want to say that something to do, if you find something to do that is compatible with who you are and allows you to respect and give dignity to everybody, then that would be something that you can remember from this conversation. Thank you for having me, and I enjoyed the learnings as well.
Thank you very much. Githinji, give us your parting shot as you tell us if you have any leadership qualities that you continue to work on.
I think the one I continue to work on is what Manoj was reflecting on: communication. That's the most difficult. That's the most difficult, especially when you're leading people. Communicating and making sure they understand what you're saying is always a challenge. That's the one I continue to try and improve on. But in terms of parting shot, I would say leadership is service, and service is giving up your power to those you lead. It's a very difficult concept to understand, but once you immerse yourself in it, it's a simple concept. So what you're doing at Lions Eye Hospital is actually leadership by service, but you're giving up the power of being able to charge people fees. You're actually providing service and not having to ask people to give you money, because money could be your power, but you've given up that power to those people so that you can serve them. I'll stop there. Thanks for having me on this debate. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Edna, as you give us your parting shot, tell us one thing that you're most proud of.
Okay, my parting shot: agree that leadership is service. It is not about you. If you're sitting in that position and focused on yourself, when you're getting the next this, how am I going to do that? And it's just about you, then no, you're getting it wrong. It is not about you. It is total service. One other thing I would mention is growth for you, for your organization, does not come in times of comfort. Growth comes from uncomfortable places. Put yourself out there. If you want to grow, you have to push yourself outside of your comfort zone. That's the only way you're going to grow. I think the two things that I'm most proud of is the impact I've had on the individuals I've worked with and the people I've led. I love it when I can look back and see the people that I've worked with go on into expanded leadership roles themselves and sometimes become peers. Nothing gives me greater joy than to see that happen. Second, I would love it when I'm able to step back and see that my organization is able to have a greater impact on the business, greater than before my leadership tenure. So two things I am is when I'm able to impact individuals and they thrive, impact organizations and have a greater impact.
Thank you very much. Manoj, Shah, please give us your parting shot.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ann, for having me on this platform. And today, as I participate with Marion, Dr. Gitahi, and Edna, it only reminds me that effective and successful leaders learn every day. And today, it's really been a learning experience for me from all the three panelists, Marion, Dr. Gitahi, and Edna. And thank you very much for sharing your insights. My parting shot to all the listeners who have tuned in: if you want to be a successful leader, stop thinking small. Don't be just one of a million, be one in a million. Thank you very much, Anne, for giving me this opportunity with the great panelists that we have here. Wish you all a lovely evening and a lovely weekend. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much to all our panelists. I'll just summarize a few things that I have picked up this afternoon. We have had all of them have a mentor. So it's very important to have a mentor. Could be your relative, your mother, your brother, your sister, but I think it's very, very important to have a mentor who you look up to as you become a leader. And we have learned that leadership is an attitude, is a service. It's about, impacting others and not being self-centered. So if you have that in you, then you should be able to be a successful leader. We have learned that as you lead, you need to be resilient and you need to have hope, because you will encounter a lot of situations that might make you feel like, you want to give up. So resilience and hope is very, very important. Work-life balance. At the end of the day, you're still a human being, so we must have work-life balance. And most important, we have had the reasons that institutions fail is lack of a plan, lack of a vision. So if you want to be a leader, can you make sure you have a plan and you have a vision? Whether women or men make good leaders, the jury is still out there, but I think we have had, but each of them has their own characteristics that make them better in certain situations. But I think the message is men and women are leaders, and we must be able to communicate effectively. So thank you very much. And at this point,